All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday educational seminar with F45 Largo. Super excited to have one of our members, one of our awesome members, Susan Washburn, talking about financial fitness today. So you know that we're all about wellness, and wellness includes physical wellness, mental wellness, spiritual wellness, and I think financial wellness. We have to get all these components right so we can live a happy, sane, healthy life. So Susan, I'm going to give just a quick brief introduction. I know she's going to talk a little bit more about it. Used to live in New Orleans, then moved here to join us in the Tampa Bay area. And she is a certified financial planner with ProVice Management Group. So take it away, Susan. Thank you.
Hello all. I know most of you, so I have just a screen to kind of keep me on track. But what I thought I would do is just kind of talk about 5 financial fitness tips. I think at the end of the day, we can only handle so much. So hopefully if you are doing one, hopefully there's something on this list that makes you think and gets you into a place where you're financially well. I know we spend a lot of time working on at F45 on our physical well-being, but as Nate said, they all kind of go together. So the first thing I thought I would tell you about is just my story. As a young woman, I lived a pretty charmed life. By the age of 30, I had a beautiful home in New Orleans. I had a fabulous career, and on the screen you might be able to see my family, my 2 sons. And so I was checking off a lot of boxes, and then suddenly life happened and 2 events derailed my life. The first was Hurricane Katrina. It dumped over 8 feet of water into our home, and it forced us to evacuate. And I ended up in Vero Beach, Florida, which is on the other coast. And after spending some time rebuilding our lives, I was knocked to my feet by a second event, and that was my divorce. And though I couldn't control the natural disaster that hit my life, I could have better handled the financial chaos of a divorce. Because what happened was I found myself educated as an attorney, and I was a stay-at-home mom, and I delegated my financial affairs. And all of a sudden I was now alone and frankly embarrassed by my lack of financial knowledge. And so to regain control of my life, I had to get smart about money. And that has ultimately led me to help others in the financial world. So that just gives you a little background about how I got here. So with no further ado, my five thoughts on the basic stuff you can do. Do any of you have an emergency and opportunity fund? Have you ever heard of that? It's kind of like a rainy day fund. It's a fund that you take and you have 3 to 6 months of take-home pay. And I think for a lot of Americans right now, if they had that, that would have taken a lot of the stress and pressure off the last few months where so many people have become unemployed or don't have an income coming in. What that emergency and opportunity fund does, it helps you take care of your living expenses. And I just look at living expenses as those basic necessities that you need each and every day, whether it be food or gas for your car or your electricity. The other reason to have an emergency and opportunity fund is it's a great way to start saving for your future. So if you have a car need coming up or you have a house coming up, it's a way for you to save. So it's one of those things that if you don't have an emergency and opportunity fund, it's something to consider doing. You want to keep it somewhere where it's liquid, and that means in my business that you can get to it. You can feel it, you can see it, so you'd have it in a bank account that's insured, or you may have it in a checking account. So that's my first tip to kind of get that rainy day fund going, if you will, having an emergency and opportunity fund. Tip number 2 is that dreaded B word, budget, budget, budget. And I would tell you that a budget shouldn't be a bad thing. It's really just a way to see how much money you have coming in and where you spend it. I always tell people you know, sometimes when I say budget, people start rolling their eyes. I can, you know, or I feel that they're rolling their eyes at me. But keep it simple and keep it something that is fun for you. Approach it positively. I think one of the easiest rules is to kind of do the 50-30-20 rule, where 50% goes towards living expenses. So that may be the things that I just mentioned earlier, like your house, your food, electricity, water, the basic things you need day to day. 30% needs to go towards the not fun stuff, well, I call it fun stuff, fun and lifestyle. So if you like to travel, if you like to go out to dinner, if you like to go see a band, the fun things that add color to your life. And then the 20% should really just go towards saving. And that may be helping to pay off debt, it may be saving for retirement, but you always need to think about the future you. And you have to start doing that while you're younger rather than older. And you'll see that I just put up there that 59% of Americans live paycheck to paycheck. So I would say to you, even I sometimes have to look at, you know, we have a number in our head about how much we're spending, but sometimes you really need to either get Mint or get an Excel worksheet or just get a notebook and just figure out what your expenses really are. And I think a lot of people in the last few months have had to really learn to spend intentionally when funds have been tight. So ask yourself why you're purchasing something. Do you really need it? Kind of the psychology behind it all. So that's all I have to say about budgets. Celeste was asking a little bit about life insurance earlier. And a lot of you, that's a question. The first question with life insurance is, do you need life insurance? And there are two times that I recommend insurance to people. One of them is if you were to die tomorrow, is there someone that depends upon those funds? It may be a spouse, a partner, children. And the other reason for life insurance is to help pay off a debt. Sometimes, especially when we're younger and we're buying a house, and that's a big expense. If we were to die, we may want our partner to be able to not have that worry. So those are two of the times I often suggest buying life insurance. If you don't have any dependents, you probably don't need it, or you may get to a certain point where your children grow up and you don't need to keep supporting them. The life insurance that I generally recommend to people is something called term insurance. Terms, just like its name says, it goes for a certain amount of time. And it could be 10, it could be 20, it could be 30 years. Term insurance is inexpensive, especially the younger you are when you buy it. It requires a medical exam usually. It's something you can often just go online. When I bought term insurance when I was 40, I just did it online. You don't necessarily have to have an agent for that. And the other thing you always want to remember with insurance policies is to clearly put your beneficiaries. A beneficiary is just who would get that money should you die. And the reason I say that is sometimes when people get life insurance, they get it because they're married, so they're putting it on the other spouse. If circumstances change and one of the spouses were to get divorced, if you were to get divorced and you forgot to change your beneficiaries, if you don't change that information, your ex-spouse would get it. Sometimes people think a will control how that goes, but when you buy life insurance, it's a contract with the insurance company. So if you want to change a beneficiary, you need to take that upon yourself to get it done. And then you need to just look at how much insurance you need, and you just look at a bunch of different factors, and it depends on each and every one of you, whether you need looking to replace income, pay debts, meet financial goals. So those are just some of the basics of life insurance. Credit card debt is something that a lot of Americans face. I looked up this week and saw that on the average, we have 4 credit cards and the average balance is about $6,200. So just like my picture shows this beautiful beach in the sand, you can't just stick your head in the sand with credit card debt. You have to have a plan. It doesn't go away because you wish it to go away. And there are a lot of different ways to approach that, and there are different ways you can get rid of it. One of them is known as the avalanche approach, where you just kind of figure out all your credit cards, find the one that you owe them, have the highest interest rate, and you attack that one the hardest. You still have to keep paying on the other ones, but that's the one you really want to go after. And just remember that credit card debt does hurt you in other ways, because when you do want to borrow money for a car or a home, if your credit rating isn't so great, you're going to pay more to borrow money. So it's just an area that you have to think about. And if you have an emergency and opportunity fund, then you're not stuck going to have to throw that the car repair you weren't expecting on the bill. The last thing that I think everyone needs to think about, and you're all very young on this call, is retirement planning. You have to take care of your old self by start to do it while you're still young. There are two things that are really helpful for retirement planning. When you're young, you have lots of time to save money. And there's something called compounding interest. It's a very sexy, wonderful thing. So if you don't know what compounding interest is, next time you're on Google, I want you to look it up. But if you do work for an employer, I want you to find out if your employer offers something called a 401k plan. That's a way for you to contribute. And often employers will give you a match or free money. If you don't have that, you have to be a little bit more innovative. And there are different ways you can do that. There are a lot of different ways you can set up retirement plans. I just threw a few of them there. Small businesses have some things called SEPs and Simples, and then there's an IRA and there's a Roth IRA, and I won't go into all the details, but there's a plan that can work for you, and there are pluses and minuses that go along with all of them. And finally, I just wanted to let everyone know that, for me, financial fitness, financial wellness, and it gives you financial freedom. And I concentrate a lot with women on trying to get them smarter about money. I'm astounded that about 69% of women would rather talk about death than money. And we're really good at we're really good as women doing budgeting and paying the bills, but we don't go that next step. So for women, I always think it's even more important that we learn to invest early, because one, we live longer. We're often out of the workplace for almost a decade due to children, taking care of aging relatives. And when we get old, our healthcare costs are up. So we have more interruptions. So it becomes even more critical for the women on this call that are listening to even take those extra steps. And those were just 5 quick thoughts I had. So do you all have any questions for me or any thoughts?
I love that point you made, that avoidance is not a plan. That's really that should cover everything in life.
That's true.
Hey, Susan, oh, go ahead, sorry.
No, go ahead.
I guess if you're trying to prioritize, especially now if we're doing some additional budgeting, we have some credit card debt. You talked about getting kind of that emergency and opportunity fund set aside. Should we tackle the credit card debt first and try to pay that down in lieu of setting up that emergency fund?
Probably, because credit card debt, usually your credit card bills are going to be so much higher yes, I would probably go for handling, trying to get rid of the debt first.
And if there are any, if we do have multiple credit cards and we owe money, are there any recommendations or assistance programs or ways where you can kind of consolidate the debt into one, maybe lower interest rate loan and pay all those off and then just focus on the loan?
There are a lot of different ways you can handle it. Sometimes you might even get an offer. One way is just to call up, credit card companies right now and just say, look, these are tough times. What can you do? Work with me. How can you can negotiate sometimes some of the money off or a lower interest rate and kind of just say, look, I'm really trying hard to get this under control. What can we do? When I was talking about that avalanche method, where you're kind of pinpointing one credit card at a time and paying that down while still paying the minimum, it can be overwhelming. So I don't want you to starve doing this. I learned one of the things that goes on credit cards the most is paying for people's groceries. So you might be able to get a loan, but you may not qualify for a loan if you have too much credit card debt. There are some nonprofits online that will help you as well. So there are different resources. I think the first step is to figure out what you have, and you also have to stop spending on them too. You have to, it kind of goes hand in hand with your budget as well. You need to figure out where are you spending money and why are you spending money. So.
Yeah, and I think that was a really powerful idea you stated previously, which is to take action and to call your landlord, call the credit card companies, call the people you owe money, medical debt, and just say, here's the situation. And you're acting in good faith to say that I'm willing to create a plan to get this, to pay this. Because the big fear, I mean, I'm reading articles now, banks are setting aside billions of dollars of what they think is going to be bad debt. People who cannot pay back the debt. So if you're one of those people who's like, I'm going to pay you back, let's work together on this, I think you're going to find some relief in the short term. All right, one more question. So I have some money and I hear that the stock market is kind of going down and all my friends are talking about putting some money in the stock market. Should I do that or should I pay off my credit cards?
I'm probably going to tell you to pay off your credit cards, because your credit card bills and your interest rate are going to be at least, I'm going to say, if we're lucky, 10%. And for me to promise you in this market, I can get you 10%. I mean, I can't make you that kind of money probably with your risk tolerance. I mean, that would require a risky profile and very aggressive, and you're probably not in a good position to do that if you're got that much debt. So it's not that I don't think that this is a potential time to invest, but I can't time the market. People always want to say, and it doesn't matter who you talk to, everyone tells you about their victories in the stock market, not their down days. So it's more important to have time in the stock market than timing the market. And what you're talking about is more timing the market. So it's tempting. I mean, if someone, I do have some clients who said, look, I'm not retiring for 10 years, 15 years. I want to put some money in the market, and they don't have credit card debt and they have extra thought, they have their emergency and opportunity fund. I think all of those parts you have to get in order before you really want to start investing. Except for retirement, because retirement, if you do have some incentives, especially through your employer, you want to be able to get that free money if you have a 401k. So, but I would definitely take care of credit card debt and getting an emergency and opportunity fund in play. So if another pandemic does come, and people in the service industry, hairdressers and people that work at restaurants have been hit so hard by all of this because they don't have a chance to make income. And I'm going to guess that most of them don't have 3 months of, money on the sidelines. And those that have to wait for unemployment, that seems to have been a disaster in Florida for people getting those funds, or waiting for federal assistance. And when you don't have to rely on those resources and you can rely on yourself, I think that just takes so much stress out of your life and so much of the anxiety, knowing that you can get through those. Often when my clients go into retirement, what we do is we put 1 year to 2 years worth of their living expenses just into cash. So that if you have some time like this, we don't have to sell into a market. We don't have to react. Stillness can be our friend. And, not jumping in and out of the market, like I said, and trying to time it.
So if I'm an F45 Largo member and I'm looking for a little bit of assistance, how do we engage you? What kind of services?
Just give me a call. I'm always happy to give anyone 10, 15 minutes, help you out if you just get you started, get you in the right direction. And that's easy enough to do for anyone. So, and we always love to help people and get them on that road to financial wellness, just like you all get me into shape, the gym.
That's awesome. Well, thank you so much for sharing your information and knowledge. I think this is awesome. So thank you.
And I'm looking forward to the gym being open again.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Great night, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.